afternoon. I'm loving this nice English weather we're having. I feel so at home. It's wonderful. So, thought for food. I'm actually a scientist in my day job, but my passion is in food security, and especially thought for food, which is wonderful. It is, at its heart, it's a competition for young people around the world to come up with a novel solution to help the global food crisis. So it started in 2011. In the top left here was our first global summit. There were only 10 teams in the United Kingdom, and we had a summit of about 50 people, and it got bigger and bigger. We went to Berlin, we went to Lisbon. And then this year, in this fantastic venue, the Giardino Verde in Zurich, we had 400 teams from over 100 different countries competing for a $10,000 prize. And it's a wonderful movement. It's not just a competition, it's a global family. So here are all our ambassadors on the stage in Zurich, and they come from all over the world. In the front row, we have previous winners from Bangladesh. We have our 3 Brazilians in the front there as well. And if you look at the world map, this is all of our ambassadors around the world. We cover every single continent apart from Antarctica, which is pretty cool. We've got a good number in Brazil. We've got people in the USA, Europe, Africa, Australia. And it's a really, really wonderful global family. And it actually works. It's great. So some of our previous winners have got some really cool companies. So in the top left, we have Henlight, who won in Berlin a couple of years ago. And they've got this really cool light which you can put in a chicken hutch, and it helps chickens to lay more eggs, which helps farmers in developing countries. In the top right, we've got Agrilution, who have a hydroponic growth cube to help vertical farming in cities. In the bottom left here, we've got Team Fruity Cycle from Uganda, who have a methane-powered tricycle, which helps take food from the farm to the market and stops food waste. And then in the bottom here, we've got Fopo Food Powder, who become quite famous now. They take food that's about to rot, and they powder it, and they make a nice, nutritious meal out of that powdered food. But what is Thought for Food all about? It's about uprooting the status quo. We want novel solutions. We've got all these food production methods, but we need to innovate it. And what is the status quo? Well, this is it. We've got 10 billion people by 2050, and we have to feed them all. I like this cartoon because it's got this little train, and the train is the food production services, and it's going, I really hope I can, I hope I can do it, and I hope we can do it as well, but it's getting harder and harder and harder. So I took part in the first ever Thought for Food competition in 2011, and I was looking at the status quo. I was thinking, what is the status quo? And I looked at this, and this is nuts. So in the middle is all of the humans on the planet. Each little square is 1 million metric tons of human. And all of these light grey ones are our livestock. So at the moment, there is more cattle on the planet per weight than human at the moment. And the same goes for sheep, goats, all these sort of things. And these little green squares are wild mammals. So throughout all that rainforest, all those savannas throughout the world, our wild mammals are vastly overwhelmed by our livestock. And this is completely unsustainable. And I'm going to focus on cattle. Now, I know this is a pretty hard sell in Brazil, which is one of the biggest beef-producing countries in the world. And beef is tasty. I went to a churrascaria the other night for some research, as you have to do. And beef is tasty. I like beef. Beef is good. It's good for the economy. It's good for people's livelihoods. But we're making too much of it, and the way that we produce it is really, really unsustainable. This is an idyllic situation, cows eating grass, but the reality is, it looks more like this. Cows don't really eat grass anymore. What do they eat? Oops, how do I go back one? They eat grain. So 1/3 of all the grain we produce on the planet goes to feed cattle. 1/3 of it goes to waste, and we eat the other third. But 1/3 of our total grain goes to feed cattle and other livestock, which is bad in a number of ways. First of all, deforestation. Cattle are the biggest single cause of deforestation worldwide. And it's not just chopping down rainforests so that cows can graze, it's chopping down rainforests so that cows can eat soybean, which is awful. And cows are the biggest single cause of desert expansion worldwide. This is the Colorado River, which no longer flows to the sea anymore. It's dried up. We use so much water to produce the soybean to feed cattle that we're running out of fresh water. 5% of all of the fresh water on the planet goes to feed cattle. And there's this, shit. Cows poo poo an awful, awful lot. In the USA alone, cows produce 100,000 metric tons of shit every single minute. 100,000 metric tons of waste. And it's not just poo, it's methane gas, which causes climate change, and it's ammonia, which is the biggest single cause of acid rain. It's incredibly unsustainable. And where does this go? It goes to our rivers. This is a eutrophied river. All of the agricultural runoff goes into rivers and then causes these toxic algal blooms, right, which starve the rivers of life. And where do rivers go? Rivers go to the sea. This is the Gulf of Mexico. This sort of heat map basically shows a complete dead zone. In that area, there is barely any life because the algal blooms from the waste are basically starving the seas of oxygen, which is awful. Like, the BP oil spill was nothing compared to this, and this happens every single year. So, to summarize, like, cows are the biggest single cause of desertification worldwide, the biggest single cause of deforestation, and the biggest single cause of acid rain. So, there must be another way. So I was taking part in the first ever competition thinking, what can we do? And I thought, aha, why not eat insects? Insects are everywhere. Why not do this? And I thought, wait a minute, I've done this before. In 2009, I was on a field trip in Ecuador. And I was staying in this hut with a tribe. It was pretty cool. We were doing some research in the rainforest. There's me with a nice big earthworm. I can't quite believe how big the wildlife is in South America. It's really exciting. It's much more exciting than being in England. And one day, they brought to us this massive big bucket with these, like, throbbing beta larvae. And I thought, these things down here, like, what are they doing with those? And they said, you're going to eat them. I was like, no, I'm not. That's disgusting. It's horrible. And there's these, like, big pulsing insects and stuff. But anyway, a couple of days later, they stopped pulsing, and they put them on the barbecue. And they were amazing. They tasted a bit like a mixture of pistachio and peanut butter and bacon at the same time. It was really, really nice. I was mind blown. Although, I was nearly put off for life because there was one left in the bucket, and I thought, oh, Chris, shall we share one? He was like, I think we should eat it. So I bit into it, and it was not cooked at all. Raw insects, no. I bit into it, and it exploded all over my face, and I thought, no. But anyway, that didn't put me off. So I went home, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this myself. So I bought some grasshoppers, some desert locusts. See, locusts are, annoying. They eat all your crops and stuff. So why eat them? Eat the bugs. So I did, and a bit of sweet chili sauce cooked for like 7 minutes in the oven. Locusts are amazing. Or just on their own, they've got this ridiculously naturally nutty flavor. They're quite delicious. And then, so I thought, I'll expand my food horizons. So I got some caterpillars. I got some waxworms, which they're naturally parasitic on beehives, so they taste a bit like honey or a bit like beeswax. They're okay with a bit of guacamole and some salsa. Absolutely delicious. And I even tried this. I went on television in England and tried to persuade the presenters to try and eat some bugs. And that's where I found that I might have a problem persuading people to do this, because clearly, Phil over here was loving the insects, but Holly in the background spent the entire episode going like, no! That's horrible. So it's a hard sell, right? Insects crawl around. They're not the most attractive things to eat. But then I've never looked at a cow and thought, that looks tasty. It only becomes tasty when you chop it up into steaks and it comes on a plate and it's nicely presented, right? So anyway, I've got to sell this to people. So back to sustainability, right? Let's say one of those bits of wheat is 1 kilogram of wheat, and each of these are 1 kilogram of cow or pig or chicken. It takes 9 kilograms of grain to produce 1 kilogram of beef. That's a conservative estimate. So if you think about all of that grain that we feed to livestock, 1/3 of our total grain goes to livestock, and we're wasting most of it, 9 kilograms of grain for 1 kilogram of beef. Whereas with crickets, down at the bottom, it's more like 1.2 kilograms of food to make 1 kilogram of insects. It's far less wasteful. We need to waste less in this world. And insects don't waste much. They don't waste things like heating themselves up and things like that. And there's this as well. So they're incredibly nutritious. So people sometimes say, well, where am I going to get my protein from? Like, meat's really rich in protein. It's really rich in B vitamins and minerals and that sort of thing. If you actually look at it, insects are the most nutritious thing on the planet, weight for weight. They're incredible. It's not just the protein. The protein is equivalent in insects as it is in beef or chicken or pork. But if you look at the B vitamins, which are really important and quite hard to find in a vegetarian diet, insects are really, really rich in those. And it's down here, the important ones are the minerals. So iron, calcium, zinc. Mineral deficiencies are a massive problem around the world and actually contribute most to malnutrition. So in just a tiny amount of insects, you can get your daily amount of zinc, copper, iron, whatever, calcium, manganese, not even present in our other meat. So they're really, really nutritious as well. They're healthy. And variety is the spice of life. And around the world, we only eat about 87 mammal species. But there's like 1,700 species of edible insects. It's amazing, all different shapes, sizes, flavors, textures. Just imagine, like you go to a restaurant and your menu's about like this. Because there's so many to choose from. Like, what do you choose? It'd be like an Italian pizza restaurant. It'd be amazing. And insect pizza is also very delicious. So they've got a lot of choice. And this choice also helps with the nutrition, right? So you've got your grubs, which are incredibly high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are as good, weight for weight, as statins at reducing heart disease. Extremely healthy. Your grasshoppers are ridiculously high in protein. They can be up to 70 grams of protein per 100 grams of dry weight. And then you've got your caterpillars. This is some gusanos in Mexico, which are full of iron, zinc, calcium. Incredibly healthy and very, very diverse. And around the world, 2.5 billion people already eat bugs. It's not a weird thing. Like some people think, oh, these people in these places, they don't have enough food to eat, therefore they're going to eat an insect. But what I want to try and convince people is actually insects can be a gourmet thing. It's a thing that can be really tasty. There's so many different varieties of insect, but the problem is around the world, especially even in Thailand, it's becoming more common to actually want to eat meat because it looks as a luxury thing, which is the wrong way. We've already got too many cows on the planet. We can't have more. It's not sustainable. We need to diversify our food, not all eat the same food. So around the world, in Mexico, you've got escamoles, which is like ant caviar, which is delicious. You've got gusanos, you've got these bugs, sago grubs. In Australia, the native Aboriginal people eat these things called honey ants, which are these ants which produce nectar and store it in their abdomen. And then it helps the worker ants like suck it from the other ants to help them do their daily jobs. But they're really tasty. And even here in Brazil, people eat queen ants. It's a thing that people do. And it's like, it is gourmet. I mean, we already eat things as a luxury which have more legs than insects. They're not that disgusting if you think about it. Like a lobster's got way more legs than an insect. 200 years ago, no one was eating lobster in like a fancy restaurant. It was seen as a peasant food and stuff. But now, in England, you can pay £60 for a lobster, 60 quid for something very, very buggy. You've got escamoles, which are a luxury food in Mexico City. You've got shrimps. Shrimps and mussels normally grow in places where there's human excrement and stuff. Like that's way more disgusting. Insects are actually very clean animals to eat. So it's gourmet. And I was thinking, well, like, how can we make this happen? And this is where design comes into it, right? Picnic Brazil, right? We've got a lot of design aspects to this conference. And I thought, sushi. 25 years ago, no one was eating sushi outside of Japan. People were saying, like, raw fish, no, that sounds horrible. But look at it, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And now around the world, we've got sushi restaurants everywhere, and people want to eat sushi. They'll pay good money for sushi. So if we can combine insects with this sort of beautiful design, then maybe we can expand people's horizons and get them to eat some bugs. So my dream eventually is to have a chain of insect tapas bars around the world called the Legless Locust, where you have an insect farm and a restaurant, and then like a little insect interactive museum thing. But back to thought for food. So 5 years ago, not many people were talking about insect eating seriously. But in this year's competition, the two winning teams actually won, and they were both insect ideas. And one of them was genius. So they're from Indonesia. And their idea was that in Indonesia, a lot of rainforest gets chopped down to produce palm oil. If you look in a lot of food in the supermarket, it's full of palm oil. Vegetable oil is mostly palm oil, and this is destroying rainforests around the world. So what they did was they got mealworms, they got insects, and they've basically extracted the fats from them and made cooking oil. So you can now actually cook your food with insect oil. It's absolutely genius. And they did tests on it, and it's really nutritious. It's as good as olive oil, and it's tasty. So that's an amazing idea. But kind of to bring this full circle in like a thought for food way, One of our former winners is called Agrilution, and 3 years ago, they came second in Thought for Food and won $5,000. And now they've just got funding to actually launch their company. So I'm actually going to go and start working for these guys in Munich. And this is like a hydroponics cube for growing plants. But eventually, we want to kind of integrate insects into this sort of system. And then, around the world, you could be growing plants and insects in your kitchen at the same time and have food fresh like that. So, if you are a student, or you know some students, then do sign up for Thought for Food, because it's an amazing opportunity, and it actually works, and you could end up with a job or a business out of it. But I've run out of time, but I normally finish my talks with a poem. Am I okay to do that? Excellent. I've got a poem about bugs. It perfectly concludes my talk. So, bugs have benefits, and no, I'm not trying to jest with this, because I insist, if you look at a list of the statistics, it's all about locusts. And no, we are no jokers, but seriously, locusts are certainly a more sustainable way forwards compared to that Angus beef in your burgers that leave more grain for the worse off among us. Locusts are 60% protein and lean like baked beans or chicken. But in Thailand, it's insects that make the kids beam, and the kernel ain't the only cause of good finger licking. They taste nutty like cashews, and in fact, they go pretty well in a pate or a butty. We cooked them up in Manchester, made a Thai green curry, and we've got to get that to market in a hurry, according to an enthusiastic man from Bury. Now, on the subject of palate, let's face it, it's just lately that lobster was good enough for a palace. And truly, believe me, it is no fallacy that locusts are as good as those shrimps from the sea. So, in conclusion, to dispel the illusion, insects are tasty, not horrible or gruesome. So once you've removed the heads, wings, and legs, they look less like bugs, but like langoustes instead. And when it comes to making the world well fed, we could do worse than to eat locusts alongside our rice, corn, and bread. Cheers.